The chandelier glittered over the Grand Lakeshore Ballroom as my sister Natalie stood at the head table, champagne flute raised, her couture gown shimmering with every movement. 200 of Chicago's most prominent guests leaned in, waiting for her maid of honor toast. About me, her older sister Ava. The cautionary tale. I smoothed my off-the-rack navy dress and tried not to notice the glances from relatives who thought their judgment was discreet. Aunt Linda murmured something to Uncle Rob behind her menu. Natalie's college roommate shot me a half-smirk, half-sigh expression I knew too well. They were all expecting it. Natalie had hinted for weeks that her speech would be real and meaningful, code for a public showcase of my shortcomings, if only they knew. I glanced at my phone under the table. 8:47 p.m. The embargo lifted at 9 o'clock sharp, just 13 more minutes of nodding politely, playing the role of family failure. Before I talk about my incredible husband Ben, Natalie began, her voice smooth as velvet, I want to share a few words about the person who taught me resilience, my sister Ava. Here it comes, I thought, sipping the champagne I bought myself, but pretended was a rare indulgence. Ben Larchmont sat beside her, the image of generational wealth and Ivy League polish. Everything my parents fantasized about for us. Everything they were convinced I'd never become. My sister Ava's here tonight, Natalie said, turning to beam at me with polished warmth, and I've learned a lot by watching her journey. The room pivoted to me. I returned the smile, the picture of gracious humility. Ava's path hasn't been straightforward, she continued. She's tried so many different things, teaching, marketing, even running a bakery at one point. Polite chuckles. Aunt Linda nodded sagely. Natalie pressed on. Right now she's freelancing in tech, though it's more of a passion project than a business, right? Living in that sweet little walk-up near Wicker Park, still driving her old Civic, still dreaming big. Sympathetic head tilts, a few sad smiles. Uncle Rob let out a heavy sigh. I glanced down at my phone again. 8:59 p.m. 1 more minute. Then the world would know I wasn't just freelancing in tech. I was the anonymous founder of Lynx Vault, the cybersecurity firm behind tonight's front page headline. $320 million 0 cents acquisition. Effective 9 o'clock p.m. Let the wedding guests read it and weep. What they didn't know was that my cozy little walk-up was actually a penthouse I owned, one of 3 properties I held through a private trust. That my beat-up Civic was just for appearances, while my real cars were housed in a climate-controlled garage off Lakeshore Drive. That my so-called failed ventures had been strategic, each acquisition and shutdown part of a larger blueprint. But you know what I've learned from Ava? Natalie continued, her tone shifting from sweetness to sharp resolve. I've learned what not to do. I've learned the value of stability, of realism, of avoiding those wild dreams that never work out. The crowd ate it up. The beautiful, composed bride offering a life lesson, using her older sister as the moral. Ava, I hope tonight shows you what true success looks like. A real partnership, rooted in practicality and shared values. I hope you'll stop chasing fantasies and start living in reality. She lifted her flute higher. To my sister, Ava, may marriage teach her what ambition never could. Laughter rippled, glasses began to rise. I raised mine too, smile flawless, posture poised. But then, something Natalie hadn't rehearsed. The ballroom screens, previously looping wedding photos, flickered. The hotel's live newsfeed system, synced to breaking updates, kicked in automatically. A news anchor's voice rang out over the chatter. We interrupt with breaking news. Chicago woman becomes youngest billionaire in state history. Natalie froze. Her flute paused midair. 200 guests turned toward the screens. Photo appeared. My photo. Not from Instagram, the one I'd taken for Forbes. Ava Sinclair, 30, of downtown Chicago, has been identified as the anonymous founder and CEO of Lynx Vault, a cybersecurity firm just acquired by Meridian Corp. In a $4,700,000,000 0 cents deal. Sources say Sinclair will personally net $3,200,000,000 0 cents. She maintained anonymity throughout development, operating under a shell entity and living modestly to avoid media attention. The ballroom was silent, dead silent. I could hear the hum of the AC, the clink of a dessert fork. Someone dropped a bracelet. Natalie's mouth parted, Ben's jaw clenched. I sipped my champagne, letting the silence stretch, then offered a quiet toast back to lessons learned. My parents, seated at the family table beneath a cascade of white roses, looked like they were struggling to breathe. Link's Vault revolutionized cybersecurity for high-frequency trading and financial infrastructure, the anchor continued. Its proprietary AI is now embedded across multiple global firms, including Larchmont and Rowe. Ben's firm. I watched his expression collapse in real time, like a house of cards meeting wind. He blinked at the screen, realization dawning. The most valuable tool in his company's portfolio had been built by the sister-in-law he'd dismissed as irrelevant, the one they'd all pitied. Sinclair declined to comment for this story, the anchor added, but sources confirm she intends to expand into aerospace security and next-gen energy systems. The broadcast ended. The slideshow of Natalie and Ben resumed, but no one was watching wedding photos anymore. All eyes were on me. I rose slowly, smoothing my plain navy dress, once seen as humble, now transformed into the quiet power uniform of someone who didn't need flash to command attention. Well, I said, my voice clear and composed in the hush, I suppose the cat's out of the bag. Natalie finally found her voice. Ava, how long have you been doing this? 5 years, I replied. Since the Christmas you told me to stop embarrassing the family with my coding hobby. I turned to face the crowd, these guests who had spent the night smirking, whispering, pitying. I want to thank my sister for her thoughtful toast. She's right. I have learned a lot about family. I paused. I've learned how to stay quiet while building something powerful. I've learned how people measure worth by appearances. And I've learned that sometimes the best response is simply winning. Ben rose, visibly rattled. Ava, if I said anything that... You didn't say anything tonight, I cut in, but last month at the country club when you joked that Natalie was lucky to have at least one successful sibling. I gave him a cool smile. That was enlightening. He went pale. He hadn't seen me that day lunching 2 tables over with a potential investor. I pulled out my phone. 47 interview requests, 12 investment proposals, 1 keynote at the World Economic Forum. Not bad for a Friday night. Natalie slumped into her chair, her picture-perfect toast now a collapsed fairy tale. The deal finalizes Monday, I said. I'll remain CEO. And yes, my next venture launches soon. My phone buzzed again, and I smiled. If you thought the wedding was dramatic, wait until they find out what I'm planning next. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes after the champagne settles. A text lit up my phone. It was from Kara, my assistant. Forbes confirmed, interview moved to tomorrow morning, cover story locked for Monday. I stood and gathered my clutch, the same minimalist purse I'd carried all evening, now suddenly worthy of its own spotlight. I should probably go, I said aloud, letting the words float above the stunned silence. Early meeting with Forbes, something about a cover story. I leaned in to kiss Natalie's cheek, lowering my voice just enough for only her to hear. Congrats on the wedding, sis. I hope Ben realizes he just married into a billionaire family. I gave a small pause. Technically, through me, not you. As I walked toward the ballroom doors, the silence traveled with me. 200 people who had spent the evening whispering, laughing, underestimating, now watching the youngest billionaire in Illinois history leave their party. Just before I reached the door, I turned back. The wedding photographer was frantically adjusting his lens, suddenly realizing he'd captured one of the most expensive humiliations in recent social memory. Oh, and Natalie? I called across the room. That little walk-up you mentioned? I own the whole building, 47 floors. Think of it as a wedding gift, something to ponder the next time you talk about realistic goals. The next morning, I sat in my real office on the 45th floor of Meridian Tower, sipping the same dark roast I'd loved for years, back when everyone assumed it was the only kind I could afford. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Family, old friends, classmates, even former bosses, suddenly eager to reconnect. I ignored most, but one message made me pause. Saw the news. Remember when you asked if anyone would ever take your impossible ideas seriously? I think you got your answer. So proud of you. Dr. Kim. I was about to respond when Kara knocked. M. Sinclair? There's a Natalie Larchmont here to see you. Says she's your sister. I checked my watch. 10:30. IMing. Right on schedule. Send her in. Natalie walked in, perfectly polished, her beige designer coat crisp, her smile delicate but strategic. Eva, she said smoothly. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. I gestured to the seat across from mine, the same desk where I'd built what they all thought was just a fantasy. Just reviewing acquisition proposals. What can I do for you? I asked calmly. Natalie sat down with practiced grace, clutching her designer bag like it might protect her. I wanted to apologize for last night, she said. The speech, it was meant to be motivational, not hurtful. I studied her expression, looking for something, anything, genuine beneath the flawless makeup. Motivational? I echoed. I thought if I showed you what stability looked like, what conventional success could achieve, it might inspire you to take a more traditional path. There it was, even now, after the news, after the headlines, she still believed she was the one offering wisdom to her underperforming sister. Natalie, let me ask you something. What do you think Ben makes at Larchmont and Rowe? She straightened a little. He's one of their top partners. Nearly $500,000 last year. I tapped my keyboard, pulling up a document. Larchmont and Rowe paid Link's Vault $847 million, 0 cents in licensing fees over the last 3 years. Your husband's entire firm runs on infrastructure I created. Her smile trembled. Your wedding last night? Ben told the golf club it was his gift to you, but the florist, the venue, and the caterer are all subsidiaries of companies I own. Through shell entities, of course. Natalie blinked. The foundation of her polished composure was starting to crack. So when you stood up to educate me about real success, I said softly, you were, without knowing it, financing your sermon with my money. Eva, I didn't know, she whispered. How could I have? You couldn't, I said, standing and walking toward the tall windows. Because you never asked. In 5 years, not once did you ask what I was working on. You saw an old Civic and a modest apartment, and you assumed you knew everything. I glanced over my shoulder. But that's not what upset me. She looked up. I'm upset because you used your wedding, what should have been your happiest day, to humiliate someone you say you love. She was quiet for a long moment, then finally her voice cracked. I was jealous. I turned, stunned. Jealous? Of what? Of your freedom, she said. Of your courage. I followed the rules. The school, the career, the husband. You walked away from all of it and built something unforgettable. For the first time that morning, she sounded like my sister, not a press release. I spent years watching you, Natalie said softly, thinking you were struggling, telling myself that my path was smarter, safer, more realistic. She looked up, meeting my gaze. For the first time in years, there was no performance behind her eyes. I was wrong. I sat down again, searching her face. Behind the flawless makeup and curated outfit, I saw something real. Vulnerability. Honesty. You're not wrong about stability having value, I said. And yeah, planning matters. But you were wrong to think success only wears one face. My phone buzzed. A message from the aerospace development team. They wanted to schedule Monday's strategy meeting. I'm building something new now, I said, glancing at the screen. Quantum aerospace. We're developing orbital manufacturing platforms for zero-gravity AI systems. Eventually, satellite-based infrastructure for deep space tech. Natalie blinked. Space manufacturing? I gave her the first genuine smile I'd shared in years. Want to hear about it? For the next hour, I walked her through the blueprint. How Linksvalt's AI would power unmanned space factories, how modular systems could reshape exploration and off-planet logistics. She listened closely, asked thoughtful questions about funding, supply chains, even potential policy hurdles. Finally, she said, I have connections. Defense contractors, NASA-adjacent firms, even some aerospace investors through Ben's network. If you're serious, I'd like to help. I raised an eyebrow. You're offering? She nodded. If you'll let me. I know I don't deserve it after last night, but I want to be the sister who believes in you, not the one who belittles you. I considered that forgiveness versus boundaries, trust versus control. There might be a place for you at quantum aerospace, I said carefully, but not because we share blood, because I think you can bring real value, business development, partnerships, relationship strategy. Her face lit up. You mean it? I do. But Natalie, if you come on board, you work for me. You follow my lead, my deadlines, my standards, no family favors, no second-guessing me in meetings. She nodded. Understood. And one more thing, I added, rising. Next time you give a speech about success and failure, make sure you know which ones. Which? She laughed. Really laughed. Deal. As she walked out to consider the offer, I paused. 24 hours ago, I was the afterthought. Today, I was offering my sister a job. Funny how fast everything changes. My phone rang. Forbes here, the voice said warmly. Mrs. Sinclair, congratulations on your incredible success. Our readers are fascinated, building $1 billion company in secret, while your own family thought you were struggling. How did you do it? I leaned back in my chair, watching the Chicago skyline shimmer through the glass. Simple, I said. Success isn't about proving yourself to anyone else. It's about building something that matters, even when no one understands it but you. And what's next for Ava Sinclair? The interviewer asked. I smiled, thinking of orbital manufacturing systems and the sister who might just help me launch them. The sky's not the limit anymore, I said. It's just the beginning. That Monday, the Forbes cover dropped. The Billionaire Next Door. How Ava Sinclair Built an AI Empire in Plain Sight. The article chronicled my 5-year journey from the so-called family dropout to tech visionary. But the part that mattered most wasn't in the magazine. It was in the text I received later that afternoon. First day at Quantum Aerospace tomorrow. Thank you for the second chance. Let's build something impossible together. Natalie. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes, it's giving people a chance to grow beyond who they were when they doubted you. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they take it. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told your dreams were too big, then you already know part of my story. I didn't build Linksvault and launch Quantum Aerospace to prove anything to my family. I did it because I believed in something that didn't exist yet, and I refused to wait for anyone else's permission to create it. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me your story, your impossible goal, your quiet plan. I want to know what you're building, what you're dreaming, and what they said you'd never do. And if my journey resonated with you, I ask one thing. Subscribe to this channel, not just to follow my next move, but to be part of a space that honors risk-takers, misfits, and quiet visionaries like you. Here's the truth. Success doesn't always wear a suit, drive a luxury car, or win the loudest applause. Sometimes it lives in tiny apartments, shows up in secondhand shoes, and keeps going anyway. Build quietly. Dream boldly. And when the time comes, let your work speak louder than anyone ever did. I'm Ava Sinclair, and we're just getting started.